The Metropolitan Club's grand ballroom was designed to impress. Vaulted ceilings soared 3 stories high, massive oil paintings lined the walls, and crystal chandeliers cast golden light across 200 guests dressed in their finest evening wear. My parents' 38th wedding anniversary party was the kind of event people RSVP'd to immediately. An invitation meant you'd made it into the inner circle of Walter and Patricia Winters' carefully curated social world. I stood near the back of the ballroom in a simple black cocktail dress I'd worn at least a dozen times before, watching my older brother Andrew work the room with his wife Jessica. They moved with practiced ease, stopping to chat with senators, CEOs, and old money families who'd been attending these events for generations. My younger sister Caroline held court near the champagne fountain in an emerald marquesa gown, her venture capitalist fiancé Brandon beside her, both of them radiating the confidence of people who'd never questioned their place in the world. Mom and Dad stood on the small stage at the front of the ballroom, preparing for the evening's speeches. Dad in his custom tuxedo, Mom in vintage Valentino, both of them looking every inch the power couple they'd been for nearly 4 decades. Walter Winters had built Winters & Associates into one of the country's premier consulting firms. Mom sat on 5 nonprofit boards and chaired the city's most prestigious arts foundation. And then there was me, Sarah Winters, the social worker daughter. The one who'd disappointed everyone by choosing service over success. Sarah. My Aunt Margaret appeared beside me with a sympathetic smile that made my skin crawl. Look. Comfortable. How practical. Thank you, I said, taking a sip of water. Still working at that community center? She asked it the way someone might ask if you were still recovering from an illness. I am, I confirmed. 7 years now. 7 years, she repeated, shaking her head. Well, it's admirable. Even if it's not quite what your parents hoped for. Uncle Thomas joined us, scotch in hand. Margaret, leave the girl alone. Sarah's doing important work. Even if it doesn't pay well. It pays fine, I said quietly. Define fine, my cousin Bradley said, appearing with his wife. Because I looked up average social worker salaries. You're making what, 40,000? 50? That's barely above the poverty line. I manage, I said. Barely, Bradley's wife Amanda added. I saw your apartment last year when I was in your neighborhood. That building is practically condemned. It's in a working-class neighborhood, I corrected. There's a difference. A working-class neighborhood where people get their cars stolen, Uncle Thomas said. Your father tells me you don't even own a car. You take the bus to work. Public transportation is efficient, I said. Public transportation is for people who can't afford cars, Amanda said. Sarah, we all know you're trying to make some kind of point about living simply, but you're 32. Don't you think it's time to grow up? More family members drifted over, drawn by the conversation like sharks sensing blood in water. What are we discussing? My Aunt Carol asked. Sarah's career choices, Bradley said. Or lack thereof. Oh, Aunt Carol's expression shifted to practiced sympathy. Yes, such a shame. All that education wasted on social work. I have a master's degree in social work from Columbia, I said. The education isn't wasted. A Columbia degree working at a community center, my cousin David said, laughing. That's like buying a Ferrari to drive to the grocery store. Massive waste of resources. Some of us measure success differently, I said. Some of us can afford to. Andrew appeared, Jessica beside him. Look, Sarah, we get it. You want to help people. That's noble. But you could help people and still have a real career. You could work for a foundation that pays 6 figures. Consult for nonprofits at a high level. Instead, you're doing direct service work for poverty wages. Someone has to do direct service work, I said. Yes, Jessica agreed. But that someone doesn't have to be a Winters. We have a family reputation to maintain. The words hung in the air like smoke. Family reputation, I repeated slowly. Come on, Sarah, Andrew said. You know how this works. Our family name means something in this city. When people hear Winters, they think of success, influence, power. Then they meet you, the sister who works at a community center, and it raises questions. Questions like what? I asked. Questions like why the Winters family can't take care of their own, Amanda said. People assume you're struggling. That you couldn't make it in the real world. That your family had to subsidize your charity work because you couldn't earn a living. They're not entirely wrong, Bradley added. Your parents have been supplementing your income for years. Everyone knows it. I almost told them. Almost mentioned that the checks my parents sent, $2,000 monthly for 7 years, totaling $168,000, sat untouched in an account I'd never accessed. Almost explained that I'd been donating that money to scholarship funds for students from exactly the kinds of families I worked with every day. But I didn't. Because what was about to happen would be so much more satisfying. Dad had taken the microphone on stage. The room quieted, 200 guests turning their attention to the front of the ballroom. Thank you all for coming, he began, his voice carrying the practiced authority of someone used to commanding rooms. Patricia and I are honored to celebrate our 38th anniversary with the people who matter most to us. Applause rippled through the crowd. 38 years of marriage, he continued. 3 children. A successful business. More blessings than we could possibly count. Patricia and I have built a life we're incredibly proud of. He paused and I saw him glance toward where I stood at the back of the room. Of course, not everything has gone exactly as planned, he said, and something in his tone made my stomach tighten. We've had our share of disappointments along the way. Challenges that tested us. Choices we didn't quite understand. I felt the eyes turning toward me. Guests glancing back then forward, putting together what he was saying. But a strong marriage means supporting each other through the disappointments as well as the triumphs, Dad continued. Patricia has been my rock through all of it. When our youngest daughter chose a path we didn't understand, when she turned her back on the opportunities we'd worked so hard to provide, Patricia reminded me that we had to love our children regardless of their choices. The room had gone completely silent now, everyone understanding exactly what, or rather who, he was talking about. Let's be honest, Dad said, his voice carrying to every corner of the massive ballroom. Sarah is the family disappointment. The words hit like physical blows. 200 guests heard them. 200 witnesses to my father publicly declaring me a disappointment at his anniversary party. Mom stood beside him on stage, and when he glanced at her, she nodded. Confirming. Yes, our daughter is a disappointment. I stood there silently, hands clasped in front of me, face carefully neutral. 7 years of this. 7 years of being the punchline, the cautionary tale, the example of what not to do with your life. But, Dad continued, warming to his theme now, she's still our daughter. And we support her even when we don't understand her choices. Even when she breaks our hearts by wasting her potential. That's what family means. He was speaking to the room, but his words were aimed at me. A public shaming disguised as parental love. Now, he said, shifting to a brighter tone, let's talk about our successes. Andrew, come up here. My brother climbed the stage to applause. Dad launched into a speech about Andrew's accomplishments. Youngest partner at his law firm, successful marriage, 2 beautiful children on the way. I watched from the back, feeling the weight of 200 pairs of eyes on me, hearing the whispers starting. Did he really just call his daughter a disappointment? In front of everyone. How embarrassing for her. How embarrassing for them, you mean? Having a daughter who's basically failed at life. That's when I saw him enter. Governor Richard Martinez walked into the ballroom flanked by 4 state police security officers. He was impossible to miss. 6 months away from a presidential run, his face on every news channel and political magazine. Half the guests in this room had donated to his campaigns. The whispers shifted immediately. Is that the governor? What's he doing here? I didn't know he was coming. Dad had stopped his speech, confused by the interruption. Security was approaching the stage, speaking with the event coordinator. The governor scanned the ballroom, and when his eyes found me at the back, he smiled. Then he started walking. Directly toward me. His security detail fanning out around him. The crowd parted like water. I stood perfectly still, watching him approach. We'd met 4 times before. Twice at the hospital initiative meetings, once at the funding announcement, and once at a private dinner to discuss implementation. But those had all been closed-door events, not public spectacles with 200 witnesses. Ms. Winters, the governor said, stopping in front of me. His voice carried in the sudden silence. I apologize for interrupting your parents' celebration, but when my office told me you'd be here, I had to stop by. I wanted to personally thank you. Every eye in the ballroom was fixed on us now. Thank me, I said calmly, though my heart was racing. For your extraordinary generosity, he said. Your $500 million donation to the Children's Hospital Initiative is the largest private contribution to healthcare in our state's history. The hospital system you've funded will serve over 50,000 children annually. You've literally changed thousands of lives. The silence that followed was so complete I could hear champagne bubbles bursting in glasses nearby. $500 million? Someone whispered. The governor continued, his voice clear and carrying. Ms. Winters, your foundation's work in this state has been transformational. The children's hospitals, the education initiatives, the housing programs, you've invested over $1.2 billion in underserved communities. Your impact cannot be overstated. Up on stage, Dad's speech cards slipped from his hands, scattering across the floor. Additionally, the governor said, pulling a folder from his jacket, I wanted to deliver this personally. The president has nominated you for the Presidential Medal of Freedom for your humanitarian work. As someone who's watched your foundation's growth over the past 7 years, I was honored to write one of the recommendation letters. He handed me the folder. I opened it to see official White House letterhead. The ceremony is in 6 weeks, he said. I hope you'll accept. The country needs more people like you, people who use their resources to actually improve lives rather than just accumulating wealth. My hands shook slightly as I held the folder. Thank you, Governor, I managed. This is unexpected. You're too modest, he said warmly. The Winters Foundation is doing work that should have been done decades ago. You saw gaps in our social safety net and you filled them. Not with half measures or performative charity, but with real, sustainable solutions backed by serious capital. He turned to address the room, his politician's instinct to make a moment out of this. Ladies and gentlemen, he said, his voice projecting to every corner of the ballroom. I know I'm crashing this anniversary party, but I couldn't pass up the opportunity to recognize someone truly remarkable. Miss Sarah Winters has donated over $1.2 billion to charitable causes in our state alone. Her foundation operates in 17 states, has created over 30,000 jobs, and provides services to more than 200,000 people annually. The number seemed to echo in the stunned silence. She's funded 12 children's hospitals, 43 schools and 67 community centers. She's built affordable housing for 8,000 families. She's provided scholarships for over 5,000 students. And she's done it all with zero publicity, zero fanfare, zero credit seeking. I only found out she was the Winters Foundation's sole donor because I demanded to meet the person behind such transformational work. He turned back to me. You tried to stay anonymous. But work this important deserves recognition. You're an American hero, Ms. Winters. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. The governor shook my hand, then nodded to his security team. As quickly as he'd arrived, he was gone, leaving behind a ballroom full of people trying to process what they'd just witnessed. I looked up at the stage. At Dad, frozen beside the microphone, his face pale. At Mom, one hand pressed to her chest. At Andrew standing beside them, mouth open in shock. The silence stretched for what felt like an eternity. Then my Aunt Margaret spoke, her voice carrying in the quiet. Did he say $1.2 billion? With AB, Uncle Thomas confirmed, sounding dazed. Sarah is the Winters Foundation? Aunt Carol whispered. The Winters Foundation that built the new children's hospital downtown? And 43 schools, Bradley added, his earlier smugness completely evaporated. And housing for 8,000 families. Caroline had pushed through the crowd to reach me, her emerald gown swishing. Sarah, is this real? You run a $1 billion foundation. I founded it, I said quietly. 7 years ago with money from Grandmother Winters' trust fund. Grandmother's trust fund was $2 million, Andrew said from the stage, finding his voice. You turned $2 million into over $1 billion? The foundation's current endowment is $3.7 billion, I corrected. We've donated $1.2 billion to date. The rest is invested to ensure long-term sustainability. $3.7 billion, Dad repeated faintly. How? Mom's voice cracked. How is this possible? I walked toward the stage and the crowd parted to let me through. I climbed the steps, standing in front of my parents for the first time in this very public setting. Grandmother left me $2 million, I said, speaking to them but knowing the entire room was listening. She said it was because I was the only one in the family who understood that money is a tool, not a trophy. I invested it aggressively in undervalued markets, particularly in emerging technology and sustainable development. You invested in tech? Andrew asked. Early-stage startups that are now worth billions, I confirmed. I turned $2 million into $500 million in 3 years. Then I started the foundation. For the past 4 years, I've been systematically donating the investment returns while the principal continues to grow. But you work at a community center, Mom said weakly. The Southeast Community Center is one of 67 centers the Winters Foundation built and operates, I said. I work there because I believe in understanding the impact of our programs from the ground level. I spend 2 days a week doing direct service work, counseling, family support, program development. The other 5 days I run the foundation. 5 days? Caroline said. You work 7 days a week? The foundation operates across 17 states, I said. It requires constant oversight. But yes, I take Sundays off. Usually. The apartment, Amanda said, still trying to make sense of this. The building we thought was practically condemned. I own that building, I said. And the 3 buildings next to it. We purchased them 5 years ago, renovated them into affordable housing, and I live in one unit because I believe in living in the communities we serve. My neighbors are families using our programs. Their children attend our after-school programs. Their parents use our job training services. I see the impact of our work every single day. You live in low-income housing, Uncle Thomas said slowly. By choice. I live where I'm needed, I corrected. And my apartment is perfectly comfortable. 3 bedrooms, updated kitchen, good security. Just because it's in a working-class neighborhood doesn't mean it's a slum. Dad had slowly lowered himself into a chair on the stage, looking like he might pass out. Sarah, why didn't you tell us? I tried, I said, and my voice was steady despite the emotion churning inside. 7 years ago I told you I was starting a foundation focused on systemic poverty reduction. Remember what you said? He closed his eyes. You said I was wasting grandmother's money on feel-good charity work that wouldn't make a real difference, I continued. You told me to invest the money properly. Let you manage it. Build real wealth instead of throwing it away on poor people who wouldn't appreciate it. The room had gone completely silent again, everyone listening to this family confrontation play out on stage. When I refused, I continued, you stopped talking to me about money entirely. Seemed I'd failed. Seemed I was broke. Started sending me checks every month to help out. The checks, Mom whispered. You never spent them. Never touched them, I confirmed. Every penny you sent me for 7 years, $168,000 total, sits in an account. I've been donating the interest to scholarship funds, but the principal is there if you want it back. You didn't need our money, Andrew said. I never needed your money, I said. But you needed to send it. You needed me to be struggling. You needed someone in the family to fail so you could feel successful by comparison. So you could send checks and feel generous. So you could shake your heads and talk about my wasted potential at dinner parties. The accusation hung in the air like smoke. The family disappointment, I said, looking directly at my father. That's what you called me. In front of 200 people. Without knowing anything about my actual life or my actual work. You decided I was a disappointment because I didn't follow your definition of success. Sarah, he said, his voice breaking. I didn't know. You didn't ask, I interrupted. 7 years, Dad. 7 years of seeing me maybe once a month at family dinners. 7 years of never asking about my work beyond, still at the community center? 7 years of assuming, judging, and dismissing me, while I was building something that's helped hundreds of thousands of people. The Presidential Medal of Freedom, Mom said faintly. You're getting the Presidential Medal of Freedom. Nominated, I corrected. It's not confirmed yet. The President of the United States thinks you deserve the nation's highest civilian honor, Caroline said. Sarah, that's extraordinary. It's just recognition, I said. The work is what matters. The families we've housed. The children we've educated. The communities we've revitalized. That's what actually counts. Governor Martinez's security had left behind a state police officer who now approached the stage. Ms. Winters, the governor wanted me to give you this. He handed me a business card. His private number. He said to call him directly about the rural healthcare initiative you've been developing. Thank you, I said, taking the card. After the officer left, Uncle Thomas spoke up from the crowd. The rural healthcare initiative. Is that the one I've been reading about in the news? The billion-dollar program to put clinics in underserved areas. 1.3 billion actually, I said. We're partnering with the state to build 47 rural health clinics over the next 5 years. It'll provide healthcare access to over 300,000 people who currently have to drive 2 or more hours to see a doctor. $1.3 billion, he repeated. Sarah, do you understand what you've built? What you've accomplished? I understand. I saw problems and had resources to address them, I said. That's all. I'm not special. I just happened to be in a position to help, so I did. You're incredibly special, Aunt Margaret said, and for the first time in my memory she sounded sincere. We've all been so blind. So stupidly blind. Not blind, I corrected gently. You just saw what you expected to see. I dress simply, live modestly, work in low-income communities. You assumed that meant I was poor. That I'd failed. That I needed your pity. When actually you're worth billions, Bradley said. The foundation is worth billions, I corrected. I take a salary of $90,000 annually. Everything else goes to programs. I live simply because I believe in the mission. Every dollar I don't spend on designer clothes or luxury cars is a dollar that can fund scholarships or build housing or provide health care. That's remarkable, Jessica said quietly. That level of commitment. That sacrifice. It's not sacrifice, I said. It's choice. I don't feel deprived. I feel fulfilled. I go to sleep every night knowing that my work is making a tangible difference in people's lives. That's worth more than any amount of money. Dad had been silent through all of this, tears streaming down his face. Now he stood walking toward me. Sarah, he said, his voice shaking. I've been a fool. A complete, utter fool. I called you a disappointment. In front of everyone. When you're extraordinary. You're everything I should have seen and celebrated. Yes, I agreed. You should have. Can you forgive me? He asked. I looked at him for a long moment. At the genuine remorse on his face. At the tears. At the recognition of just how badly he'd misjudged me. Eventually, I said. But not tonight. Tonight the damage is too fresh. The humiliation is too raw. You called me a disappointment in front of 200 people, Dad. That's not something I can just forgive in a moment. I understand, he said. I don't deserve forgiveness. Maybe not, I agreed. But I believe people can change. That relationships can heal. So eventually, yes, we can work on this. But it will take time. And it will require you to actually see me instead of the version of me that fits your narrative. I want to see you, he said. The real you. I want to understand your work, your life, your choices. All of it. Hey, I said. But not tonight. Tonight, this is your anniversary party. You and Mom have 38 years of marriage to celebrate. That's real. That's valuable. Let's try to honor that despite everything else. Mom had joined us on stage, mascara streaking down her face. Sarah, I'm so sorry. For all of it. For not seeing you. For not believing in you. For letting your father say those horrible things. I know, I said. We'll deal with it. Later. Tomorrow maybe. Or next week. But for now, let's just try to get through the rest of this party. How? Andrew asked, gesturing to the shocked crowd. After everything that just happened? By focusing on what actually matters, I said. Mom and Dad's marriage. Their genuine love for each other. The family they built, even if that family turned out very differently than anyone expected. I turned to address the crowd, my voice carrying across the ballroom. My parents have been married for 38 years, I said. That's an achievement worth celebrating. They've built a life together, raised 3 children, created a legacy. Yes, they misunderstood one of those children rather spectacularly. But they're not bad people. They're just people who made assumptions and mistakes. Like we all do. I looked back at Dad. You called me a disappointment. That hurt. It will continue to hurt for a long time. But you're still my father. And I still love you. Even when you're monumentally wrong about me. He nodded, unable to speak. So, I continued to the crowd, let's try to move forward. Celebrate the actual anniversary. Toast to love and commitment and 38 years of partnership. The rest, all the revelations and apologies and complicated family dynamics, we can process later. The crowd seemed to exhale collectively. Conversations resumed, though much more subdued than before. Waiters began circulating again with champagne and hors d'oeuvres. Caroline climbed onto the stage, pulling me into a hug. "I've been terrible to you," she whispered. "Judging your choices. Pitying you. When you were doing something incredible." "You didn't know," I said. "I should have asked," she said. "Should have cared enough to actually understand instead of just assuming." "You can ask now," I said. "You can learn. If you actually want to." "I do," she said firmly. "I want to know everything. Your work, your life, all of it." "Hey," I said. "Come visit the community center next week. See what we actually do. Meet the families we serve. Then we can talk." She nodded, wiping tears from her eyes. The rest of the party was surreal. People approached me with a mix of awe, confusion, and embarrassment. Some apologized for their earlier comments. Some asked about the foundation's work. Some just stared, trying to reconcile the Sarah they thought they knew with the reality that had just been revealed. I answered questions patiently, explained our programs, talked about the impact measurements and sustainability models. Some people were genuinely interested. Others just wanted to be able to say they'd talked to the billionaire philanthropist who turned out to be hiding in their family all along. Around 10 p.m. I decided I'd had enough. I found my parents near the stage talking quietly with Andrew and Caroline. "I'm heading out," I said. "Already?" Mom asked. "It's still early." "It's been a long night," I said. "Emotionally exhausting. I need some quiet." "Can we talk soon?" Dad asked. "Really talk? About everything?" "Sunday dinner," I suggested. "Come to my apartment. See where I actually live. Meet some of my neighbors. Then we can talk." "We'll be there," he promised. I hugged them both, brief, slightly awkward hugs that acknowledged we had a long way to go before things felt normal again. As I walked out of the Metropolitan Club, I pulled out my phone. 17 missed calls from my foundation's board members, 43 text messages, and over 100 emails. News of the governor's appearance had already spread. The foundation's anonymity was officially over. Tomorrow would be chaos. Media requests, donor inquiries, partnership proposals, the whole infrastructure of public philanthropy that I'd been avoiding for 7 years. But tonight I just wanted to go home. To my modest 3-bedroom apartment in the building I owned in the neighborhood I served. To the life I'd built that was finally being seen for what it actually was. Not a disappointment. Not a failure. But a deliberate choice to use privilege and resources to actually help people instead of just accumulating more wealth and status. My Uber driver. I still used Uber because why own a car in a city with good public transportation? Tried to make small talk about the governor's motorcade he'd seen. I smiled and nodded, not ready to explain that the governor had been coming to see me. That would be tomorrow's conversation. Tonight I was just tired. Tired but fulfilled. Because regardless of what my family thought, regardless of whether they ever truly understood, I knew my work mattered. And that was enough.